might be a bit of a deep one to start with, but 600 games combined this week as a player and a coach. What does the journey mean to you?
Wow, you are doing your stats. I didn't even realise that. It's been a long time in the game. I remember being a young kid growing up in the bush, and all I wanted to do was either play cricket for Australia or play VFL footy as it was known then. So the cricket for Australia never eventuated, obviously, but to be involved in this great game that, when I was a kid growing up in the bush, footy in winter, cricket in summer, and the other thing to do was to shoot some bunny rabbits and go yabbying outside of school. So it's a pretty simple life where I grew up, and just really fortunate being able to throw myself into one of my passions, which is footy.
So you weren't aware of the milestone? You weren't aware that was coming up?
No, I didn't realise it. I mean, there's so many milestones in the game, in the game, but we really take note of the one the players are involved in more so than the coaches. But proud to be involved in the game for this long, but probably bigger fish to fry in terms of where we're going and what we're trying to achieve. And hopefully last week's game against the Demons just gave some of our supporters and indeed our players and our staff here just some validation. A lot of the hard work that's gone on is starting to materialise, but it's one win. we still got a lot of hard work to do, and including this week's game against Adelaide. The form team of the competition been outstanding in their first two games. So and this club's never won on Adelaide Oval too. So big task this week. Good opponent, tough venue. So as pleased as we were last week, we've got to be playing some of our best footy this week to even be in the contest, and that's what we've been really strong on across our summer. Can we be in contests deeper into games? And both the Western Bulldogs game, round one, and the Melbourne game were obviously really good contest to three-quarter time. Western Bulldogs got on top of us in the start of the last quarter, and we lost that one. And this one we got on top at the start of the last quarter, and we won that one. So we just know that if we put ourselves in the game at three-quarter time, then it's not going to guarantee us victory, but it gives us the best chance to be there and fighting deep into games. So that's what's been pleasing the first two games, and hopefully we can have the same sort of position come Adelaide at three-quarter time.
How important is it to back it up? The fans were so wrapped, the players, you can see they've got confidence, but just to make sure no bathwater drinking back in or back.
Yeah. Well, we know how tough this game is, but it's and as I said, we've never won at Adelaide Oval, whether that's against Port Adelaide or Adelaide. So the harsh reality of the game is if we don't bring our very, very best, we're not going to be in the contest. So that brings you back to sort of ground level pretty quickly. As excited as we all were with the victory last week, and formidable opponent, and we got an even more significant challenge, with no disrespect to Melbourne, given our history at Adelaide Oval. It's a more significant challenge for us because we were playing on our home ground last week. This one's in foreign territory and at a place we haven't won. So we've got to roll the sleeves up and get to work pretty quickly, which we've been able to do. The players have been really good. Excited with the victory, but get onto it. And good sides are just able to back it up and do it week after week, and we've been unable to do that for a long period of time at this footy club. And we feel like we're in a position now that consistency from one week to the next, I think, is going to be a little bit better than it's been in the past.
They've got three big forwards, and they're all having an impact. Is that keeping you up at night?
Well, yeah, geez, I think they've kicked close to 150 points in both games on average, so they're big scores in today's game. So not just their big forwards, every bloke's getting a lick of the ice cream in the Adelaide Crows forward line. So a big part of that is just trying to limit their supply. They're having in excess of 60 inside 50s, and if you get it into that forward line 60 times, they're going to kick goals. So it's not just can our backs try to negate the influence of those guys. Can we stop the supply in the first instance? And that's a whole of ground thing. It's our forwards putting on pressure and making sure it stays in our half when it's there. our midfield is making sure it doesn't get through the middle of the ground easily, so they've got easy supply to their leading forwards. And we've really got to restrict the amount of times they get it in there. Otherwise, as I said, 60 times, they're going to convert it 20 times. So we've got to try and stop that.
Is there something about Adelaide Oval that you think is the reason why you haven't won there yet?
Probably we haven't been great as a footy club. A fair bit to do with that over the journey. It's a difficult place for any team to play. The dimensions of the ground are a little bit different to the Melbourne-based ground, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. The Adelaide sides play that ground particularly well. 50,000 Crows fans doesn't help too much. Not too much evenness with the crowd there, so that helps them a bit. They were, and rightly so, they were pretty pleased with their first quarter against the Saints. If you allow the Adelaide crowd to have enormous influence too, that makes it even more difficult. So anyway, we'll give it a crack and see how we go. But bottom line is the old adage too. It's just like this oval here. It's got 4 goalposts at either end and green grass. You wouldn't think anything else would make too much of a difference, but it tends to be the case, particularly with those interstate grounds.
Have you given LDU a nudge after the weekend's performance, just to say, come on, let's do it?
No. We just know that he loves the environment here and enjoys his footy here, and it always becomes a little bit more enjoyable when you're winning games of footy. So if winning helps him to get a signature on that contract, then we'll be pretty happy.
It seems like everyone is really bullish about it, though, that it's taking a positive turn and it's trending well. Do you feel that optimism as well as a coach?
Well, I just reflect back to second half of last year. We're a little bit more competitive in the first 2 games that we've seen this year. The 2 games that we played in the pre-season, one against Melbourne out here, and we're right in the contest until 3/4 time again. And the West Coast game over in Bunbury went all the way down to the wire. So we're showing that we're more consistent in being in games and more competitive, and that's what we've asked for, and that's what we're getting to date. The challenge for us is, can we do that over a long period of time, not just 3 or 4 games thus far this year, and the back half of last year. Can we put that together over a full season, then season after season? And that's what we're working towards. And we'll just keep rolling up the sleeves and get to work on that, knowing that we're a long way from being where we want to be. And but when we get that consistency, that's when we'll be a better side.
It looks like LDU is really benefiting from having Tom Powell in the middle more often, and Luke Parker in there now too. It seems like he's having a more impact from fewer disposals so far this season.
Yeah, well, hopefully sharing the load a bit more through there. Our midfield is probably the strength of our side. Given over the journey, we've mainly drafted midfielders where we've picked in the draft. So. Our depth through there has meant that and then obviously we've recruited Parks into the club too, to just allow all those young fellas to have a wise old head there. And LD is becoming that wise old head in there now. He's played over 100 games and been in the AFL system for 7 or 8 years. So, we've got a series of guys running through there. Sheasel and McKercher and obviously Powell. Powell's 5 years into the system now. Of AFL footy, and as we've indicated before, most guys take 3, 4, 5 years to really get their careers up and going, and Powell's starting to come into his own in terms of his AFL footy, and that gives him and us more confidence that he can have a greater impact in there.
How's Griffin Logue tracking? Was he close this week?
Yeah, pretty good. He was close, but. We just don't want to take a punt. He's had sort of interrupted history over the course of the last 2 years, really. He obviously had that knee, but quite often coming back from knees, you'll have soft tissue concerns because you've just been inactive for so long. So we just want to err on the side of caution with him. So I'll be hopeful that he's able to get a pretty solid session across the weekend whilst we play. And he can train Tuesday, Thursday next week, and then make himself available for next week's game.
Do
Do you reckon you can beat them in a shootout, or do you need to make it more dour?
Well, given what we've seen over the first 2 weeks, a shootout is what Adelaide want. We've been able to score pretty well ourselves, so yeah, we're not afraid of the shootout. But the way that I've coached all along is if it is a shootout, then we might win some and we might lose some. Usually, if you've got greater control over the defensive side of the game, you've got greater control over manipulating what the result is. When it's a shootout, it's just like last week's game in terms of last night's game in terms of general play. It was a shootout. They couldn't convert those opportunities into scores, but very open game of footy, and both sides looked like they were at different stages going to rip the game apart, given they had ball in space and free a lot. But I didn't know who was going to win it until very late. You know, you got no control over it. Whereas if you're actually really strong on the defensive part of the game, you can usually dictate how things are going to go in terms of the result.